generally, Blythe, how would you say the consensus? And again, like I said, it's mixed. But what would you say? How would you summarize if someone was to ask you how is Lightfall? What would you say?
I would say that the term mixed bag underdoes it, but also I would say that at its core, the foundations of Destiny, when you break it down into a mechanical sense, is really solid now. Like, Bungie swung at a lot of things and missed some and did not miss others. I mean, everyone's going to obviously talk about the story, which of course is going to stand out like a sore thumb because it's the thing that everybody plays through so they can get access to all the new goodies, including Strand. And that undoubtedly did fall flat. You know, there's pretty much clear consensus at this moment in time that the story is not what people were expecting, and people are not okay with what happened with regards to the way that everything panned out and how it seems like lots of moments in the story just really fumble the ball and there was nothing that was explained whatsoever. But by that same token, if you look at the actual core of Destiny itself as far as a shooter, and if you look at the mechanics, if you look at all the different things the Bungie was aiming to do, a lot of those things have been accomplished. I mean, if you look at just some of the most simple stuff, you go ahead and take a look at how they have retooled the mod system. And the objective there was to make it much more understandable and approachable so that build crafting was easier, whilst also not ruining all of the power and completely downgrading players. And on reflection, Bungie has kind of accomplished that, you know? Like, we've lost a lot of the make a build kind of mods, you know, things such as, say, surprise attack, where it's like if you were going to use a sidearm, you were going to use surprise attack. But by that same token, lots of the stuff we have in there is powerful enough that it doesn't really matter. And some of it has led to absolutely absurd things out there in the game where you're able to use new bits of Strand or old bits of the Void 3.0 stuff to do some really remarkable things.
Yep.
So, mechanically speaking, the game's in a great place. Narratively speaking, it is in a really, in a really treacherous one. You know, it's very dangerous right now, in one sense, but in the other, it's actually in a very good spot, which makes it a very weird time to be a Destiny player who cares about both those things. Because, yeah, you know, there's lots of great stuff going on in the game, but don't necessarily look at the story right away.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, I think most people, I think you summed up the consensus pretty well. The core game itself, I would say, is in probably the most polished state it's ever been, especially if you look at the entire timeline of Destiny, especially Destiny 2, which has been a very, as we've said many times, the game has transitioned from the Destiny 2 in 2017 to the Destiny we have now, which is basically like Destiny 3. They kind of, I mean, all the 2017 stuff is gone. So now we have a new game, and it was very rocky getting there. But the actual game, like you said, the mod system, I think if I was to give an award to the strongest area, I do think the mod system is very solid. Some people say it's a little bit too oversimplified, but I think it was kind of necessary to get in a lot of new players and more casual players who don't interact with builds at all, and they were kind of scared off by the mod system. But Void 3.0 is like probably one of my favorite builds ever in Destiny, with the collective obligation, the Vow, pulse rifle, and just suppress and weaken and volatile, and just it's one of the most fun builds I've ever used. But then of course there's the other side. There is there's three different things. There's the story, the campaign, and the lore, which are all three different things. The story itself unanimously is bad, wasn't very good. Yeah. The campaign, which is like the actual missions, the gameplay of that campaign experience, very good. Running around Neptune, new stuff, it's a cool environment. The campaign itself was good. And the lore, which is always pretty good, that's kind of hard to fail because they can just, write up anything and make things make sense. But the connection between the story itself was, as I said, quite bad. But then the lore kind of makes up for it. And there's a lot to be said. A lot of people, I think correctly, and I agree, say that it isn't enough just to make a bad story and then make up for it later with good lore. Like you do, a lot of people do buy the expansions just to play the campaign, like a traditional game. You buy it, you beat the campaign, you beat the final boss, who is Calus, and then that's the game. If you bought it for that, you'd be a little bit like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know what the veil is. I don't know this witness guy. Like, I don't know what's happening there. But there's kind of a distinction between the lore, the story, and the campaign. And they're all, like we said, very mixed. But you are the lore aficionado. What do you think about that?
Honestly, I've got to say that this is the really tragic split down the middle for me, because the narrative team here has fumbled the ball and yet also did some incredible work. You know, like now that all of the lore of the expansion and of course the attached season is out there for everyone to see and experience, there's some amazing stuff that's happened in the lore. And that's really great to see. I mean, the Nezarec stuff in itself is brilliantly written, does a bunch of great stuff. The lore that's actually attached to Neomuna, whilst it's not everybody's cup of tea, is definitely some really awesome stuff as far as just the ideas that it explores and the different bits of Destiny's history that it touches on. And then there are really cool hints to the future as well, you know, like if you take a look at the Winterbite quest, for example, that probably leads us on to the Season of the Deep and ties in Spire of the Watcher through the AI that was the quote-unquote Watcher now being found here on Neomuna. You know, there's some really cool bits and pieces in the lore, but it just kills me to sit there and have to say that, yeah, everything you said earlier about lore does not make story is completely correct, because for as wonderful as the lore is, the story is... I mean, I said I've given my piece on criticism of the story, but it's a lot was left to be desired, and that was really quite unfortunate. It's one of those moments where I really do wish that something had been done differently. I'll be honest, at this point, I don't know what's really going on there, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff when it comes to Destiny's narrative that has improved over the years, and the improvement just wasn't seen here. At this moment in time, you know, I could go on about the campaign, but, you know, the criticism has been done to death. If I went ahead and said any more, it's one of those things of it certainly isn't helping. If there was I'm pretty much guaranteed that there's probably a dev at Bungie who is listening to every single piece of feedback that anyone has given, and, you know, they've already heard all this. So there's no point in me saying it's like, hey, you know, all the same stuff I've said before totally applies. Like, you know, they don't explain what the Veil is. They don't explain what the Radial Mast is. They don't explain where the Witness went, which, you know, perhaps is part of the future mystery of everything. They don't give anybody any kind of idea of what's going on in the future, and they don't give any kind of notion to unveiling some of the important mysteries that we expect to be unveiled at the penultimate chapter of Destiny's 10-year saga. You know,
that's the key part.
There's a lot that they really should have done and could have done here, and I think that for its position, it's something which really wasn't okay. Like, let's put this into perspective, right? If this was an expansion that released instead of Shadowkeep, I want you to just imagine that. Instead of Shadowkeep, we would have heralded this as an amazing expansion, you know?
Yeah.
This would have been totally groundbreaking. Now, granted, you know, everything that happens in one expansion can't happen in another, but it's about partly the placement, you know, and it's also about the trajectory of everything that came before, you know. When it came to Shadowkeep, we'd come off of Forsaken, which was a good story, but it was the first really good Destiny story I think lots of people had seen in D2. And it was one of those things of like, okay, this is something that bucks the trend. It's not really something that builds it. And, you know, I think in that perspective and in that context, you could have seen Lightfall be something really incredible. But again, it's the 9th out of 10, and it's called Lightfall. And I mean, it seems pretty clear that we lost at the end, but no one seems to be particularly, I mean, you know, by the end of it, Ikora should have been, you know, really distraught, as should Zavala, as should everybody. But it just, you know, there was no Thanos snaps his fingers sense of we lose. Yeah. You know, it was just it was the thing of everybody sitting around and sort of scratching their heads. Yeah. And, you know, I think too, it's just after we came off of Witch Queen and Season of the Chosen, Season of the Splicer, Season of the Lost, you know, all of these amazing narrative moments that had led up to here. Hell, even taking a look at Season of the Plunder and Season of the Seraph, you had some incredible narrative stuff going on in there. So if you look at all of this and you say that it builds to this point, you know, it's like having your Oscar announced, walking up to the stage and then, you know, pulling a Jennifer Lawrence and falling on one of the steps walking up. And it's, you know, it's really unfortunate. And, you know, the hope is that you do a great acceptance speech with Final Shape, but like the moment still happened and that still sucks. It's just like, well, here we are.
It was built up to be a
really unfortunate.
a grand moment. And I think that's the like you said, so a lot of people instantly had the reaction of like, this isn't great. There was a lot of on day one, a lot of criticism of something isn't right here, but I think it's justified. It's not. I don't think it was. There's no smoke without fire. A lot of people who were experienced with Destiny instantly got the sense something is off here. This doesn't seem to add up. And